Deep in the heart of the Sony cinematic jungle, a new predator emerges. Kraven the Hunter. But unlike the apex predator of old, this one doesn't hunt for glory or survival. He's here to protect the circle of life. Yes, truly a fearsome eco-warrior. Meanwhile, across the digital savannah, the real king of the hunt emerges. A man driven by desperation, power, and an unrelenting desire to claim his ultimate prize. In Spider-Man 2, the PS5 video game that released in 2023 by Insomniac Games, Kraven's motivation is as dark as it is tragic. He's a man dying of cancer, driven by a desperate need to find a worthy opponent who can deliver him a glorious death. This mission carries emotional weight. It's not just about the hunt, it's about ensuring his end comes at the hands of someone who exceeds his strength. Kraven is at the end of his life, consumed by pride, but his search for a worthy opponent who can give him the death he wants also becomes a sad quest for immortality through victory. His character is more than just a villain, he's tragic. He's driven by the need to prove himself before time runs out. This urgency makes him both deeper and scarier, as every decision he makes is shaped by his desperation and pride. The Kraven from the movie completely fails to grasp the complexity of the character's motivation. Instead of portraying a man grappling with his mortality, the film transforms Kraven into an eco-warrior. He's now portrayed as someone who rebels against his father and seeks to protect animals from poachers, as if he's the guardian of the animal kingdom. He's meant to be Kraven, not Dr. Dolittle. This shift from a tragic, death-obsessed predator to a half-baked, self-righteous hero not only disrespects the character, but also makes Kraven completely irrelevant as a threat. The film strips Kraven of his complexity and forces a good guy narrative on a character who was never meant to be anything but a force of nature. The Kraven from the movie has none of this drive, ambition, or desperation of the Kraven from the game, leaving him as nothing more than a hollow figure. In the Spider-Man 2 game, his hunt is not about sport but about survival. He needs Spider-Man to kill him. His motivation is raw and terrifying, imbued with the gravity of his condition. The movie's version of Kraven is seen rallying against poachers while delivering cringy speeches about saving the wildlife. He's not driven by desperation, he's driven by a shallow sense of justice, and instead of a tragic man nearing the end of his life, we get a whiny, self-righteous anti-hero who you can't take seriously. The scene in the movie where Kraven confronts his father and talks about his purpose is laughable. His moralizing feels forced and there's no real sense of danger or desperation in his actions. Instead of an intimidating predator, he's just a generic character trying too hard to fit into a heroic mold. Kraven in the game oozes menace with every word he speaks and every move he makes. He radiates an air of cold, calculated danger. His calm demeanor contrasts with his brutal intentions, making him a terrifying figure that sparks fear with just his presence. When Kraven speaks, you know he means every word. His confidence is chilling, as though he's already won the hunt before it even begins. There's no attempt to make him cool or relatable, because he's not meant to be liked. He's a predator through and through, and that's what makes him such a compelling and intimidating character. His actions speak louder than words, and the atmosphere surrounding him is one of pure danger, perfectly fitting the ruthless nature of the character. The tone of the Kraven movie is a complete disaster. Kraven is portrayed as a one-liner machine who cracks jokes and delivers cringy lines that rob him of any intimidation factor. The forced humour makes him seem like a juvenile character, more interested in impressing the audience than being an actual threat. It's clear that the film's trying too hard to make him relatable or cool, which undermines any potential menace he could have had. He isn't frightening or imposing, he's laughable, a walking stereotype of the action hero who's trying too hard to be liked. The film turns Kraven into a parody of himself, weakening the character by turning him into a wisecracking anti-hero instead of a terrifying predator. In the Spider-Man 2 game, Kraven's tone is perfectly aligned with his motivations, cold, unflinching, and deadly serious. For example, Kraven hunts Spider-Man like a predator stalks its prey, his voice low and chilling. He speaks not to entertain but to assert his dominance, creating an atmosphere of danger. Meanwhile, in the movie, Kraven's telling jokes, completely deflating any sense of danger he has. The attempt at humour in the movie diminishes Kraven's terrifying persona, making him sound more like an action hero than the lethal villain he's meant to be. Instead of a predator, movie Kraven becomes just another wisecracking protagonist in a bloated action flick, completely stripping away the character's gravitas and menace. Kraven's design in the Spider-Man 2 game is brutal and striking, reflecting his status as the apex predator. His muscular, battle-hardened body tells the story of a man who has survived countless hunts and is at the top of the food chain. He wears animal pelts and trophies from past victories, which reinforces his image as a dominant force in the wild. Every detail of his physical design screams power, survival, and obsession. He looks like a man who wouldn't hesitate to tear anything apart that stands in his way. The combination of his towering presence, brutal combat style, and intimidating design makes him feel dangerous. As for movie Kraven, well, he looks like a cheap knockoff of the character, stripped of the brutality that should define him. Instead of appearing like a terrifying hunter, he looks like a man playing dress-up. His design is bland and lacks the physicality that would make him appear as someone capable of hunting down the deadliest prey. His pelts are half-hearted and his physique is underwhelming. There's nothing about him that suggests he could take on Spider-Man or survive the harshest environments. You wouldn't think that this guy is a legendary predator. The lack of threatening physicality robs Kraven of his primal edge, turning him into a generic villain who could easily blend into any other action movie. In the Spider-Man 2 game, Kraven's physical design is integral to his character, showing him as a living embodiment of survival and strength, whereas movie Kraven's design is embarrassing. It attempts to make him look cool rather than menacing. He lacks the raw physical presence of the game version, and instead of seeing a predator in action, we see a glorified action figure with no menace at all. There's no danger in his appearance, just a man in poorly chosen gear. John Pisano's score, especially The Great Hunter, is perfect. It perfectly defines Kraven's character in the Spider-Man 2 game. The music is both raw and unrelenting, blending heavy percussion, intense drums, and sharp, tense strings to create a sound that feels savage yet redefined. The music doesn't just follow Kraven, it is Kraven, capturing his relentless pursuit, his predator instincts, and his tragic desperation. Even in quieter moments, the music leaves an echo of Kraven's presence, keeping the audience both on edge and completely immersed. The movie's score, in comparison, is a soulless exercise in mediocrity. Instead of utilizing a rich, evocative musical identity to define Kraven's primal essence, the soundtrack feels like a bland, one-size-fits-all action movie score. The lack of musical identity fails to establish Kraven as a figure of menace or depth. The score feels more like a placeholder, devoid of any personality or purpose, and does nothing to enhance the viewer's connection to the character. The difference couldn't be any clearer. The game uses its music to define Kraven as a predator on a deadly mission, while the movie squanders the opportunity, leaving its Kraven as generic and lifeless as its score. In every way possible, the Spider-Man 2 PS5 game nails the essence of Kraven as a terrifying, tragic, and ruthless hunter, while the 2024 movie version reduces him to an embarrassing parody of himself. The game Kraven is driven by the haunting motivation of his impending death, radiating menace and physical dominance. The movie Kraven, on the other hand, is a weak, moralizing figure who feels more like an action hero than the apex predator he should be. From his forced one-liners to his ridiculous design, the movie's version of Kraven fails in every respect, turning what could have been an unforgettable villain into a laughable and forgettable mess. And that's the blunt truth of it.